Ready? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City of Canning's Ordinary Council meeting for this evening. It's Tuesday, 19th of September 2023, and I apologise for the slightly late meeting. It's been quite a week. Can I start, of course, by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and also, of course, pay our respects to elders, both past and present. Can I ask everybody present here this evening, including our councillors, please, to make sure your mobile phones are turned off or on silent for the duration of the meeting. The meeting, of course, is being live streamed to the City's YouTube channel. And council meetings are public meetings, and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be made publicly accessible. And the council chambers are not a parliament, and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. And statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the city unless it is adopted by a resolution of this council. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that meeting, and verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the city does publish a recording of the meeting in full. And recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the city's express permission. As far as attendance, we have all councillors in attendance this evening. Thank you. That's at item 2. Approved leaves of absence. We have no approved leave of absence requests. Disclosures of interest. CEO, I've got a disclosure I'll make verbally in just a moment, but I'll ask you please to deal with item 3.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to item 3.1, declarations of interest of a financial interest, there are none. In relation to item 3.2, declarations of interest affecting impartiality, I have received 3. The first is from Deputy Mayor Ben Kunza in relation to CO 00523. The item details are in relation to DLGSC CSRFF 2024-25 grant applications, Ferndale Reserve Facilities Upgrade and Corinthian Park Community Facility Upgrade. The nature of his association is I am a life member of the Linwood Ferndale Football Club, which is a stakeholder in this process as a leaseholder, user of the reserve and its facilities. The second interest I've received is from Councillor Steve Parkinson in relation to item CD 01523. The item details in relation to recommendation to the West Australian Planning Commission for the proposed telecommunications infrastructure at 40 Centenary Avenue, Wilson. The nature of his association is he was employed by Optus for 13 years and involved in mobile site acquisition. The third interest I've received is from Councillor Teo in relation to item CO 00523, DLGSC CSRFF 2024-2025 grant applications, Ferndale Reserve Facilities Upgrade and Corinthian Park Community Facility Upgrade. The nature of her association is that she is a member of the Corinthian Park Tennis Club.
Thank you, CEO. And just in regards to my own governance, I'll ask you to find me a declaration form. I'll fill that out before the meeting is actually finished. Just in relation to CO 005 of 23 on page 162 of tonight's agenda, the item details are DLG SC CSRFF 2024-25 grant application, Ferndale Reserve Facilities Upgrade and Corinthian Park Community Facility Upgrade. I wish to just disclose an impartiality interest in that item, only because I'm a member of the Corinthian Park Tennis Club. In fact, I think my membership has lapsed, but I intend to actually renominate as a member, and so I just want to make it clearly known before that item comes up. Thank you very much, Governance. Announcements by the presiding member at item 4 without discussion. I do have an announcement I wanted to make tonight, and I feel I must make it. Look, I really need to address the elephant in the room tonight. Late on Sunday night in Canning Vale, an incident occurred which has understandably attracted considerable media attention. On that night, a number of election signs were stolen from private properties in Rossmoyne, Shelley and Canning Vale, and it's a matter of public record that Councillor Jacobs is alleged to have been a co-offender. Councillor Sweeney, I'll wait until you're finished if you like before I keep going, or shall I start again from the beginning?
We don't have to. I'm going to be excused, Mr Mayor. Thanks.
You're leaving?
I'm leaving, yep.
Terrific. Okay. Councillor Sweeney, without explanation, is leaving the room. I don't need an explanation. Just, yeah, thank you. Good night. I'll start again. Late on Sunday night in Canning Vale, an incident occurred which was understandably attracted considerable media attention. On that night, a number of election signs were stolen from private properties in Rossmoyne, Shelley and Canning Vale, and it's now a matter of public record that Councillor Jacobs is alleged to have been a co-offender in that offence. Now, everyone is responsible for their own actions and behaviours. The actions of any individual should not be seen as a reflection on this council or of this fine city of Canning, and nor do we as a council collectively condone them. Yesterday I called publicly on Councillor Jacobs to resign as an elected member of this city, and that I believe would have been in the best interests of this council, the City of Canning as an organisation, and the City of Canning's community until this matter is determined appropriately by a court. Councillor Jacobs has not yet chosen to do so. Councillor Jacobs is in the best interests of this council and its reputation. And you can sit there smugly smiling if you like, but I do respectfully, and I mean that respectfully, invite you to reconsider your position and to leave the chamber and take no further role in this meeting. And should you do so, I can say quite frankly that is not to be considered by any person as an admission of guilt. There is, of course, a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Councillor Jacobs, I invite you to leave the meeting. I don't need you to speak. You either leave the meeting or you don't leave the meeting. I don't want you to speak. There's no right of reply. Councillors, we're a professional, high-performing local government, and our role here this evening is to continue with the order of business on tonight's agenda diligently and without further distraction, and I intend to fulfil that obligation of my role. We shall move on to reports of delegates without discussion. Does any elected member wish to present a delegate report? Councillor Spencer T, I invite you to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Over the last couple of days, I've attended the Walga conference, which just concluded this afternoon. Yesterday was the AGM, and I attended with yourself, Mayor Patrick Hall, and I just wanted to provide a very brief summary of the key points and information. The Minister for Local Government, David Michael, in his opening address confirmed that superannuation for elected members will be part of the next tranche of reforms, and it will be legislated, which is consistent with all the information that's in the public realm. It was confirmed that this was a result of the Walga advocacy, and it's an effort to attract more diverse candidates, so young people, women, etc., to nominate for local government. So I guess to say to all those candidates listening or here tonight who've stated that they won't support administration for elected members in their campaign material, you're too late. And had you been following the reforms, you'd know that whether you're a mayor or a councillor, you simply don't have the ability to override an act of parliament. There were several motions presented at the AGM, mainly from regional local governments. Most of those were supported by a majority. However, those requiring a special majority, one of which was to amend Walga's constitution, was not supported. I will provide a full delegates report and email it to elected members once the minutes are published by Walga. And finally, I'm very pleased to announce that the City was successful in winning 2 road safety awards at the AGM yesterday. The first one was for the Urban Safety Systems Approach Complementary Initiatives, and that was for our speed zones on local streets. And we also picked up the Local Road Safety Partnership, and that was for the Canning Road Safety Management Plan. So I'd like to say congratulations to Director Bowe and his team. And I feel it would be remiss of me not to mention Ben Moore, who's no longer with the City, but played an integral role in the development of these now award-winning plans. So if I may come and give these to Director Bowe, with your permission.
Yes, please come up and we'll pass those across to Director Bowe, and congratulations to everybody involved. It's always a wonderful accolade. I echo the sentiments expressed. Well done, Director, and a round of applause, I think. Well done. Fabulous. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to accompany you to the... I very much enjoyed the convention myself for the time I spent there. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 6 on tonight's agenda, which is question time for the public. A response to questions taken on notice at item 6.1, there are none. I now move to question time for the public. I've just got a bit of a preamble. I'll get to that in a moment. The time set aside for public question time is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary, and I can do that by delegation. I have a discretion to do that on the first occasion. Just for recording purposes, if you come up to ask a question, just walk up to the podium there. The staff will actually turn the microphone on for you. And just please state your name and your address and then proceed to ask your question. That's just for the sake of the recording. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will precede verbal questions. The City has received questions for tonight's meeting from Mrs. Margaret Coombs-Pearce, Catherine Longhurst, Marnie Sultan and Judy Potter, and I understand we have other people in the audience that may wish to ask questions. Just before we do that, look, I've read through some of the questions that will be asked tonight, and I understand the sentiment in the community and the feeling in the community about a number of these issues. What I will ask you to do, though, is you're actually addressing the council and me personally as the chair of the meeting, so I would ask you to please, and I know I don't have to say this, just be respectful, please, in the manner in which you ask the questions. And also I would just say that sometimes you may not necessarily get the answer that you want on the night. There may be a number of reasons for that, but we will certainly do the best to answer the questions that we have in front of us. And if you'd like to follow up with emails to me personally or to the CEO, please do that after this meeting, but we will try to get through them as best we can. Ms Coombs-Pearce from Waterside Retreat in Wilson, would you like to step forward and ask your question? Or I may have it on notice here. I'll read the question then to the meeting. The first question is, can you please provide detailed information on all of the current election breaches to date, including which candidates have committed them, including repetitions? How many fines have been issued in accordance with the laws? CEO, I'll ask you to provide a response on the record.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the questions. The West Australian Electoral Commission are responsible for dealing with complaints and breaches relating to local government elections. In relation to the City's signage local laws, I would say the City has many local laws. How it enforces these laws is at the discretion of the City and its authorised officers. It is neither fair nor reasonable for the City to release information to members of the public about infringements it has issued to individuals.
Question 2, who makes the final decision, specifically, to determine which council rates will be or whether they will be frozen?
Thank you. Council makes the final decision and adopts a rate increase in its annual budget.
So the answer, for clarity, is only a full council of sitting council by majority can actually make a decision around the setting of rates. Question 3, has any councillor or mayor ever taken a $1 salary and or allowances, or no allowances?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, not to our knowledge.
Thank you. We have some questions here from Catherine Longhurst at Palmerston Street in St James. Ms Longhurst, are you in the audience? Would you like to step forward and ask your questions? Thank you. I'll just get the microphone turned on for you. There you go. You're on. You're live. Thank you.
Hi, Catherine Longhurst, 48 Palmerston Street, St James. My first question is, how many breaches can a councillor have before being stood down?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. Neither the City of Canning nor any other local government has the power to stand down a councillor. The Minister may, if he is satisfied it is appropriate to do so, recommend that the Governor dismiss a council member. Alternatively, if the State Administrative Tribunal finds that a councillor committed a serious breach, it may suspend for a period of up to 6 months or disqualify a councillor from holding office.
Thank you. Your second question?
Yes. Question 2, how many times can an election candidate break the local rules/laws and still be able to run for election?
CEO.
The Local Government Act determines the qualifications for holding office on council. the West Australian Electoral Commission assesses each candidate against these qualifications when accepting their nomination.
Thank you. And your third question?
Third question was, what is to stop a candidate or councillor breaking the rules continuously if there is no meaningful consequences?
CEO.
Yeah, thank you. Individual councillors and candidates are responsible for their own actions. The rules are clear and there is a reasonable expectation that they are followed. There are a number of mechanisms that councillors and candidates can be held to account, that enable councillors and candidates to be held to account for their actions.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming along. Marnie Selton of Fern Road. I don't believe Marnie is here with us this evening, so I shall read those to the meeting. First question is, can you please explain in detail how many breaches of election signage laws and regulations have been committed to date and by which nominated candidates, as well as City of Canning's process of enforcement and the fines issued to date? CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I have responded to this, but I'll certainly repeat my response. The City has many local laws. How it enforces those local laws is at the discretion of the City and its authorised officers. It is neither fair nor reasonable for the City to release information to members of the public about infringements it issues to individuals.
Thank you. And question 2 was, can you explain to we residents, under the City of Canning's Code of Conduct, the exact mechanisms or processes the City of Canning has in place to uphold and enforce its own policy in dealing with complaints against council staff? How many times can a councillor be sent back for retraining and still be considered fit for office? CEO.
Complaints for breach of the City's Code of Conduct can be lodged on the appropriate form to the City and will be forwarded to the Department of Local Government. The local government has no power to stand down a councillor. The Minister may, if he is satisfied it is appropriate to do so, recommend that the Governor dismiss a council member. If the state, alternatively, the State Administrative Tribunal may find that a councillor committed a serious breach, it may suspend for a period of up to 6 months or disqualify a councillor from holding office.
Thank you. And the third question is, do you see it as appropriate use of ratepayer funds to have spent so many City of Canning Ranger Service hours retrieving in excess of 45 items of early election signage at great risk due to the dangerous placement of some, with no recovery of these costs through an instruction to not issue any fines by the CEO? CEO.
The short answer is no.
Thank you. Judy Potter of Pitt Street in Bentley. Ms Potter, you want me to read them?
Probably best.
Thank you. Please explain to the residents, once a code of conduct complaint has been made against a councillor or a candidate, the mechanisms of how complaints are handled internally, such as who decides if the complaints are valid to be progressed, the decision-making process, and then the actual enforcement process within the City of Canning only regarding each complaint. Also, the difference between a mistake and knowingly breaking the rules/laws, full stop. Please do not use the answer of forwarding them on to the Local Government Standards Panel, because that is not what is being asked. CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. The City's Code of Conduct sets out the procedure for handling of complaints.
Question 2, please provide us with the laws and the procedural documentation of how many times a councillor can be found to be in breach of the City of Canning's Code of Conduct and retrained before the person becomes unfit to hold office. If there are no laws, can the City create a law, or who does this and how can it be done? CEO.
Thank you. The local government has no power to stand down a councillor. The Minister may, if he is satisfied it is appropriate to do so, recommend that the Governor dismiss a council member. If the State Administrative Tribunal finds that a councillor committed a serious breach, it may suspend for a period of up to 6 months or disqualify a councillor from holding office.
And question 3, does the Mayor work under the CEO or does the CEO work under the Mayor? Especially regarding the City of Canning Code of Conduct for council members, committee members and candidates. In other words, who is the real decision maker in matters of ethics and code of conduct of councillors within the City of Canning? CEO.
Thank you. The CEO is responsible to council, not the Mayor. However, the CEO also has his or her own duties and responsibilities independently of council regarding administration of the city. In relation to the second part, council has limited capacity to take action against an individual councillor. A breach of the code of conduct lodged by a councillor or member of the public is referred to the DLGSC Standards Panel for determination.
Thank you. We have questions here from Steve Walker of Farnham Street in Bentley. The first question is, can the City of Canning provide an update on the progress of the Learning City program of works planned for the major Cannington Learning Hub on 7 Oak Street? That is the first question. The second question being, did City of Canning again pay for the Verge concrete footpath replacement fronting 105 Nicholson Road in Linwood after late 2020 and 2021, following the completion of new residential dwelling? And the answer is that we'll be taking those on notice. They're going to take a little while for staff to put together the responses required for those, so they will be taken on notice, and the responses to those and all the questions asked tonight will be published in the minutes of this meeting. Mr. Aldridge, I understand you'd like to ask a question or two.
Good evening, Council, Directors and the Chair. There is some confusion and disinformation circulating in the community. Could Mr McIntosh or the CEO please confirm that it is the decision of the electors that determines where the preferential votes will go and not the decision of the candidate? So, for example, if I put a number 1 next to candidate X and 2 next to candidate Y and 3 next to candidate Z, that it's not up to candidate X as to where my preference goes. But
I'll just get an answer to your question. You've asked your question. I think we don't need you to preamble it or post-amble it. Can I get an answer for that one, or are we going to take that on notice, CEO?
Yeah, look, thank you. We'll take that on notice. Just to provide the accurate information, Mr. Aldridge.
Thank you. Next question.
just to clarify, we're a week out from not far out from the election ballots arriving.
It was a pretty simple question.
There's no one in the entire.
I don't need you to speak over me, Mr. Aldridge. You know the rules here. Under the standing orders, if I speak, you don't speak. I'm asking you not to speak. The reason for that is I don't need you to clarify. You asked a very simple question. The CEO of the organisation has told you he will take it on notice. It will be taken on notice. Your next question.
My next question is, can you please clarify that you are putting my question on notice because not a single director knows the answer to the question? Because otherwise, under section 4.88, a question must be answered.
We generally don't take advice from you, Mr. Aldridge. We have noted that the answer will be taken on notice because obviously at the moment we're not actually in a position to answer it in full, and we know that when we respond to your questions you'd like them to be answered in full, so we will take that on notice, and that's the end of the matter. So move on or sit down.
Okay, my second question is, there's also disinformation about preference swapping between candidates. To my understanding, the candidates have no choice as to where the preferences go. That is purely up to the electors when they put their numbers on the ballot. Can the CEO please confirm that that is the fact?
CEO, we'll be taking that on notice. We'll take that on notice, Mr. Aldridge. Thank you.
Can the CEO please confirm that if an elector numbers all the boxes, that it is not possible for the candidate which is less preferred to benefit above or before the candidate that is most preferred?
CEO? We'll take that on notice, Mr. Aldridge. Thanks for coming this evening.
Can I ask a final question?
No, you've had your 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for not answering any of my questions.
Yeah, we don't need you to address us disrespectfully, Mr. Aldridge. I think I've been as respectful as I possibly can with you. So just keep it civil if you don't mind, Mr. Aldridge. Do we have any further questions before we move on from the public gallery? Thanks very much, everyone, for coming along tonight. I very much appreciate you coming down to see us. If anyone would like to leave, as Mr. Aldridge now is, you're welcome to leave. The meeting will go for a considerable period of time. We will now close public question time. The time, by my recollection is 6:26 p.m. Thank you. We move on to item 7, the confirmation of minutes. The confirmation of minutes for the ordinary council meeting held on the 15th of August 2023. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 3 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Thank you, Councillor Bain, and a seconder. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll put that matter to the vote.
Waiting on one more vote, please.
We've got Councillor Sweeney's not in the room. We have our full complement.
Thank you. The motion to confirm the August OCM minutes has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you, Karen. We move on to item 8, receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1, petitions, there are none. At item 8.2, presentations, similarly none. And item 8.3, deputations, there are none. At item 9, applications for leave of absence, we received none. At item 10, questions by members, and that's elected members, of which due notice has been given without discussion, there are none. And at item 11, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery, none. Reports of committee meetings at item 12, at item 12.1, the title of that report being the report of the Audit and Risk Committee held on the 30th of August 2023. The committee recommendation is on screen, also appears on page 4 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for that item, please? I'll move that from the chair and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bain. I have nothing further to add other than I commend the recommendation. We are simply recommending that the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 30th of August for the following items in this report are actually adopted, and I support that recommendation. Councillors, I intend to put the matter to the vote. Councillor Jacobs, you got anything you wanted to add?
Not at the moment, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors.
The motion in regards to the report from the ARC meeting has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 13. At item 13.1, the responsible officer being the CEO, Michael Littleton, and there are no reports from that directorate this evening. At item 13.2, the responsible officer being Ms Lorraine Driscoll, the Director of Corporate and Commercial. The first item is CC 040 of 23. It's actually an adjourned motion. The title of the motion being Proposed Lease for the Restrata Junior Football Club at Prendwick Park in Willetton. Just to recap, the matter was originally moved by Councillor Spencer Teo and seconded by Councillor Sabiri. And Councillor Sabiri is no longer on the council after her recent resignation, and we wish her well, but she is not here. The recommendation is on page 9 of the agenda and is on screen. The report was originally presented to council back in October 2022, where the officer recommendation was moved, debated and then adjourned. Additional comments have been added to a new section at the end of the report labelled Comments Post Adjourned Motion. A suggested alternate motion has been included in this part for council's further consideration. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. On the advice of governance, I'd like to withdraw my support for the original movement of the motion and put forward the alternate motion as per point 39 in the report.
The alternate motion in this instance has, so just to clarify, Councillor Spencer Teo originally supported the recommendation. She was the mover for the original recommendation. That was almost 12 months ago. Councillor is now withdrawing her support of the matter that is covered in our standing orders, and we are moving an alternate as suggested in the report as per the officer recommendation in the report. Governance, have I got that on screen? That's the suggested motion. Can I have a mover, please, for that motion? Councillor Spencer Teo, seconder. Seconder for the alternate. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, obviously with the unanimous adoption of BR01 not that long ago, the original officer's recommendation no longer obviously complies with that policy, and then also in the interest of fairness and also transparency, I guess, the Willetton Football Club were not offered a lease. They were offered a seasonal licence recently as well, so this just makes it crystal clear that we're being consistent across the clubs and community organisations that have similar use over these facilities. That's all. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, I speak in favour of the alternative motion. I think the officers have outlined in the comments post adjourn motion as to the reasons why we should go down this path, and I think council should follow it.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on the matter before I put it to the vote? Thanks, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote. Oh.
The alternate motion for CC-04023 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We move to CC 019 of 23, the title of the report being Proposed Road Closure, portion of Cunnington Way in Queen's Park. The officer's recommendation appears on screen and also appears on page 18 of the agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Jacobs, seconder. Councillor Singh, thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Just to say, Mr Mayor, I support the motion. It makes sense to enlarge the recreational reserve and area that surrounds the park there, and I think it's a no-brainer. So I urge councillors to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the item before we put it to the vote? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-01923 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you. We move to CC 020 of 23, monthly financial report for August 2023. The officer's recommendation is on page 23 of the agenda and also appears on screen almost in a moment. It's coming up now. There we go. We got it. Thank you very much, staff. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Parkinson, thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I support the officer's recommendation. Have nothing to add. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Anyone wish to ask a question or speak against the matter? Thank you. We'll put the item to the vote.
Motion CC-02023 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
We move to item 13.3. Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Planning and Development on my right to the left of screen, is a responsible officer. CD 014 of 23 is a report number. The report title being the adoption of Scheme Amendment 13 to Local Planning Scheme number 42, additional use in brackets, medical centre, closed brackets, number 23, lot 8, Mill Street in Cannington. The recommendation appears on screen and also appears on page 59 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Bain, thank you. A seconder, please, from the floor. Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it would be a real positive step forward to have an additional medical facility in the area, increasing access and options for our local residents. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I agree totally. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Yeah, I support the officer recommendation. Have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the item? We'll put that matter to the vote. I'm going to remember to vote for one of these items in a minute. Sorry for the hold-up. I've got a lot on my mind at the moment. Thank you, Governance.
Motion CD 01423 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you. We move to CD 015 of 23. The item is a recommendation to the Western Australian Planning Commission for proposed telecommunications infrastructure at 40 Centenary Avenue, lot 4256 in Wilson. The officer's recommendation is on page 69 and also on screen. Councillor Bain, I understand we do have what I've been told here is an alternate recommendation. If you don't mind, I will deal with that as a foreshadowed motion, and I will ask staff to put that up on screen. So Councillor Bain is representing his community and has a foreshadowed alternate motion. Do you have that there? Can I have a mover for the officer's recommendation, please? Deputy Mayor, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. Councillors, we have a mover and a seconder for the item. I'll just again just raise the fact that Councillor Bain has proposed a foreshadowed alternate motion, and that alternate motion, for the sake of councillors and for their interest, is now on screen. Councillor Bain, can I just ask you, while the councillors are just reading through it, and we may need to just make it a little bit smaller so we can fit it on the screen. I'll come back to you in just a moment, Councillor Bain. I'll just invite the mover of the item to please speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hole. Look, I support the officer recommendation. If it can be brought on screen. Look, I recognise there's several nearby residents who oppose this telecommunications infrastructure. However, on the planning merits, I don't actually see a legitimate reason that would be recognised by the WAPC to oppose this proposal. Whilst there's a preference for locals for the tower to be located on the other side of Centenary Park, the report outlines why this is the required site, and also we can only make decisions on the proposal that's in front of us. You only have to read paragraph 49 of the report in terms of access to power, the potential management of the contamination when the ground is disturbed, but also the trenching and what impact that might have if an alternative location was identified on the other side of Centenary Reserve, and the impact that would have versus the perceived benefit of having the phone tower further away from its current proposed location. I recognise the concerns raised by residents, by some residents, but we've got a number of phone towers across Canning that are located in reserves, many of which are directly adjacent to houses. Riverton Reserve was built around 30 years ago. It's directly adjacent to a number of houses, and that's been gentrified. There's a number of new houses been built since then. It's a very attractive area. And only 5 years ago, a very popular childcare centre was actually built there, and they had no concerns with the phone tower being located next to it. Likewise, as I've mentioned previously, Ferndale Reserve has one in the southeast corner. Niche Development came in, and another development. Those were all snapped up. The location of the phone tower has not had an impact on the attractiveness of the area or the property values. But I recognise that's a bit of apprehension from the locals, but it isn't a planning consideration that we can raise in any case through this proposal. In saying that though, poor mobile phone coverage in an area can have detrimental impact of the attractiveness of a suburb, and you only have to go through Rossmoyne. They've got no locations they can put a mobile phone tower, and locals are consistently concerned with the poor telecommunications infrastructure. With regard to the health concerns raised during community consultation, we need to take our leadership from the Commonwealth Government, specifically the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency, which is tasked with investigating the impacts and setting the policy. Should people not agree with what's been proposed by them, then it might be appropriate to speak to your federal member of parliament and seek reviews, but we're a local government. We don't have the jurisdiction nor the expertise to be questioning that at this level. Now, again, I appreciate there's a number of residents that don't want this tower to be built. However, I don't see that we could make any other decision based on the planning merits, but also with respect to providing good telecommunications coverage over Wilson. I believe that the suburb deserves to have that, but also that if we were to look at another location, it might even have more negative consequences to the the community there in terms of the impact on Centenary Park. So I'll be supporting the officer recommendation, and I think council should too.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've given this some thought. The Deputy Mayor has, in essence, gone over some of my points, but I still need to make them. It's a 30-metre tower. It's a generous height. We cannot object on radiation reasons. Mobile communication is where it's at. And I think even last week, I found it a little bit ironic that one of the persons that was opposed to it was flicking through their mobile phone. Mobile phone is where it's at. So you can't object on radiation, and if you do have objections with that, you need to go to the federal government and talk to their radiation people. Also, I think this can bring some income to the city of around $27,000 a year. I think that's good, and I think there's a responsibility for us to offer good connectivity to our residents. I know where I am in East Cannington, I've got one bar, and I just wish someone would put up a tower. And a few years ago, I objected to a tower in Parkwood. But then I get people complaining of poor signal. So I'm stuck between people that don't want it. I think that the general idea is people don't want it next to them, but they want good signal. So I think it's a difficult situation. I understand some residents are frustrated and they don't want it there, but I've got to try and step back and look at the bigger picture. And I don't think mobile phone usage is going to go down anytime soon. They're basically computers in our hands. And the trend is even is going away from landlines. And I mean, who's got a landline these days? I don't know anybody. So if we have a responsibility, if someone can't make a call and they need to make a call, or maybe it's an urgent call or a medical call or a 000 call, or want to call the SES, or they want to even get on the internet, they need to have accessibility. And I would have trouble knowing that they didn't have the best network. I know places in third world countries that don't even have this sort of stuff. So I think, it obviously has to be a fibre optic cable go there. The power has to go there. This is not where you just can't put the stuff wherever you like. There's been a lot of thinking about this. So, Mr. Mayor, I support the tower. I know some people will be upset, but I have to look at the big picture, and I urge councillors to vote in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bain, I'm going to invite you to provide us with an alternate view, and obviously I'll leave that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be speaking against the officer's recommendation. Standing at 31 metres with a square head frame and 15 panel antennas, and with additional equipment likely to be attached in the future, the proposed phone tower will be an unmissable, eye-catching piece of technical hardware and a highly valued community recreation and green space. State Planning Policy 5.2 prescribes that when local governments are accessing or assessing the visual impact of a telecommunications tower application, they are to use the following policy measures to guide the location, siting and design of a phone tower. It reads as follows. The tower should not be prominently visible from a scenic outlook or recreational site, be located to avoid detracting from a significant view of a landmark, vista or panorama, or be located at a site where social and visual landscape values may be compromised. By these measures, the application does not demonstrate compliance with State Planning Policy 5.2. Paint and tree cover around the base of this 31-metre high structure will do little to diminish its prominence and dominance of the Centenary Park landscape. Only 48 metres from the nearest property, the proposed tower will be visible to residents. It will detract from the panorama view and scenic outlook over the park. Residents have made this very clear to us in their submissions and deputations. They know, because they live there. It is the view and outlook they know better than anyone else and have enjoyed for decades. In the applicant's planning report, there's also little mention of the elevated aspect upon which residents' houses are located and look over the park. Photo montages of the tower were provided, a number from different points in the reserve where there are no dwellings, and none from the top of a resident's driveway or front door. Given the directives of Planning Policy 5.2 regarding visual impact and the tower's location so close to residential properties, I'm struggling to understand how this site was assessed as being the most suitable. If it had to be located at Centenary Park, why not sites B and C as shown in the attachment 6 map, which are over the other side of the park, more than 100 metres away from residents? There is a power source along Centenary Avenue. It is within the coverage area. There is vehicle access, a car park, and it will have minimal impact on the practical use of the reserve. The City has confirmed that the positioning of the tower closer to Centenary Avenue could be accommodated. Not only is the proposal inconsistent with State Planning Policy 5.2, but also State Development Control Policy 5.3. The policy establishes the WAPC's position regarding the use and development of land reserved for parks and recreation under the MRS, which applies to Centenary Park. It states, the use and development of land reserved for parks and recreation under the MRS shall be restricted to that which is consistent with furthering the enhancement of the reserve and facilitating its use for recreational and conservation purposes. The use and development of land reserved for parks and recreation for purposes inconsistent, that is, recreational and conservation purposes, will not be supported. Centenary Park is used for multiple active sporting pursuits and has a basketball court, which could potentially now have a phone tower next to it, cricket pitch and cricket practice nets. It also popular passive recreation site for casual walkers, has a playground for children, a barbecue, and is a dog exercise area. This development application is clearly not for either recreational or conservation purposes and does not support the recreational amenity of the park. Thus, it is inconsistent with the proper planning for an MRS reserve and does not comply with the objectives of Development Control Policy 5.2. There is an alternative. Given these inconsistencies, Mr Mayor, with the state planning policies and the overwhelming objections of our residents, I would like to move the foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain, for speaking to the motion, and I understand that is the alternate on the screen there. Is that right? No, it's not. Thank you, Councillor. We'll just leave that alternate up for the sake of it at the moment. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Singh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak against the officer recommendation. I'll start by saying our job is pretty simple, to represent the best interests of our community members. Given that this motion is about a certain area within our community, and Councillor Bain is the only local representative available from that community, and the community, through deputations and consultation with Councillor Bain, has clearly told us their view that they do not like this tower to go up. And Councillor Bain has provided us enough reasons that why this should not go up and the foreshadow motion should. I understand that WAPC is the ultimate authority to make a decision on it, but while they are assessing that application, they will take into account the wishes of this council. We are here to represent our community members. I will take Councillor Bain's lead on this. He clearly says his community in that particular area, which this tower is going to benefit, does not want this tower to be there. So I believe we should act in the best interest, in the best interest of that community. So I will not support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favour of the motion? Councillor Parkinson, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to speak against the motion, the officer's motion. I think that in the case of Centenary Park, there are other, probably more appropriate locations. So I speak against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? Thank you. Deputy Mayor, can I ask you please to close debate?
Look, I won't say too much. I would make the point with respect to speaking on behalf of the community that there are a number of people in Wilson that would appreciate better telecommunications infrastructure. When the city goes out to consultation on this, they go out to a certain proximity to the proposed infrastructure. Poor telecommunications infrastructure goes across the whole suburb. And as the report outlines, the reason the telecommunication company is doing this is to improve telecommunications for the entire suburb of Wilson and the area in which it will cover. There are a number of reasons, as outlined in the report, why the western locations weren't decided upon and the impact it will have in terms of accessing the power sources and the relevant work that will need to access that, noting that Centenary Park is a former waste site and there's a high level of a certain level of contamination under the ground. And I believe that, as outlined in the report, that this location is the preferred location for a number of reasons, and that's why we should support it. There's no guarantee that the other locations will be come to fruition in the future, which may potentially leave Wilson with poor telecommunications in the future. So I'm supporting the officer recommendation. A few of you have spoken against, but I believe that you should vote in favour of it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll put the officer's recommendation to the vote.
The motion CD-015-23 has been carried with 5 in favour and 4 against. Those voting against the motions, Councillors Bain, Parkinson, Sakon and Singh.
Thank you, councillors. We move to the next item, which is CD 016 of 23. The report title is Recommendation to the Western Australian Planning Commission for the proposed Metronet Development Application Number 2, proposed new stations at Queen's Park and Cannington, station precincts and public realm. It's a considerable body of work and the officer's recommendation is on screen, and it is a lengthy one covering a number of pages. Can I please have a mover for that item? I'm very happy. I'll move it from the chair myself. Seconder. Councillor Singh, thank you. Councillors, I'll just speak to the item from the being, as I said, a significant body of work. I really encourage council to support the officer's recommendation in relation to this significant development. We all know what is actually proposed. We have had significant number of briefings and a really excellent degree of collaboration and cooperation from the Metronet team. We've been involved right from the onset of this project, and I really can't wait for it to start. There's going to be some disruption in time with the imminent closure of the line for what we believe may be 2 years, and I hope it will be a shorter period of time, and that will occur in November this year. But in relation to the officer's recommendation, I can assure the community that council's officers, its senior executive, its officers and also council have been working diligently in the background to make sure that what is presented to us tonight by way of the conditions attached to this item are sufficient, and I feel very comfortable with making a decision on this application tonight. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support the officer recommendation. I would like to say thank you to officers for putting up such a good recommendation towards us and working with Metronet in making sure key items like public toilets provisions at Queen's Park train station and asking for 5-year maintenance period instead of 2. So thank you very much. I support the officer recommendation.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Jacobs, did you want to speak?
I just wanted to, speaking for it, but I just wanted to say 30 seconds of...
Speak for it. Yeah.
I speak for it. I think it's good. The investment in this is a long time coming. I'm looking forward to it all getting up and running. I think it's been very detailed, been a lot of back and forth between us and Metronet. Very pleased that we can, well, obviously I'd like us to pass this. I think it will pass unanimously tonight. It's exciting for Canning. Investment in stations in Cannington and Queen's Park. Looked at the artwork, looks good. Opening up that space and getting those roads, because those crossings have been really a big bugbear for a lot of our residents for a long time. So all I can say is good things for this and encourage the council to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. With no one wishing to speak against the matter, I'll invite you to. Anyone wish to speak against it before we put the item to the vote? Thank you. We'll put the item to the vote.
Motion CD 01623 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
That's a fine result. Thank you, councillors, for your support of that item. It was important, I think, for it to be unanimously adopted, so that's significant. And we move to 13.4. Mr Warren Bowe, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. To my right here is the responsible officer, the first item being EN 017 of 23, Major Trading Undertaking, Wildback Golf Course Business Plan. The officer's recommendation is on screen and it also appears on page 118 of the agenda. Can I have a mover for that item? Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you, and a seconder, Councillor Jacobs. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. In fact, I'm rather excited about this. I think bringing the Wellback Golf Course into the 21st century is a long time due. And it will be great to, not only for myself and my family to come down and use the new facilities, but also for our ratepayers. So I think this is very exciting for the City of Canning and the Wellback Golf Course.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, I echo those comments. I know that, I'm also excited about this. I think it is in desperate need of reinvestment. Doesn't take away from the outstanding job that the previous tenant had done, and I'd like to thank him for all his hard work there. But I think we bring a level of higher resources that we can invest in this, and I'm excited to see it thrive, and I think it will. I've seen some different other golf courses and golfing ranges in Perth and in other cities that have been run by the local government, and I'm just looking forward to not only having a really good course that people visit, not only from City of Canning, but from other places, but also an important income stream for us, because we don't want to just keep hitting our residents up for everything that we need. So I'm hoping that we can make money. The CEO did brief us on this. I was very satisfied with that briefing, and I think that we can. There is a strong business case. So yeah, I would urge other councillors to support this. I think this will also be unanimous, Mr Mayor. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we put the matter to the vote? Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak in favour of this motion. I like the business plan. I like CEO's confidence when he presented it to us that this is a major revenue source we can explore for the future of the city. We can improve the service and we can make some money out of it. I hope we can. The business plan looks like we can. I believe careful execution will be required. So I am looking forward towards CEO and his team for the careful execution of this business plans, at least for next 2 years. I'll be watching closely. I really hope we make some money out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Anyone else wish to speak against the item before we put it to the vote? Thank you. With no one speaking against the matter, Councillor Spencer-Teo, there's no need to close debate. We will put the matter to the vote.
Motion EN 01723 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you. Item EN 018 of 23, the title of the report being Further Analysis of Dog on Lead and Off-Leash Spaces. That's easy for me to say. The officer's recommendation is on page 132 of the agenda and it also appears on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for this item? Deputy Mayor Kunza, thank you. A seconder? Seconder for the item? I'll second the item from the chair. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, whilst there's been a bit of discussion on this issue, especially via the media, I believe the officer report actually goes very well to illustrate why minimal changes to the on-lead and off-lead areas are required. I supported Councillor Spencer-Teo's amendment a few months ago because I believe the analysis of our dog exercise areas at that time was largely driven by public opinion via the community survey, and I saw the merit in understanding the reported dog attack data to help make the ultimate decision. Now, the information contained in this report has been invaluable, and I thank the relevant officers for their work, immense work putting it together. And whilst I sympathise with any person or animal that has been the subject to a dog attack, I believe the analysis shows there aren't any specific problem areas where we need to take specific action. There is no problem park or area. In fact, the majority of reported dog attacks occurred outside of our parks. I believe every suburb should have a park where it is not off-lead, where residents can go recreate or use a playground without fear or encountering a dog off-lead, which is why I support Part C of the recommendation, because Rossmoyne currently doesn't have that. Now, I've discussed my views with staff about Part B, and I'm unsure why most of this is being proposed. That is changing the status of the off-lead areas in the list of parks and going out to community consultation on it. As mentioned, I believe the report goes into great detail and provides a good statistical analysis into the issues, and I believe it supports largely keeping the on-lead and off-lead areas as is. The report doesn't speak to any environmental issues with no supporting data, so I'm unsure why would we be engaging the community to change the status of these parks. I believe these changes, if enacted, would simply cause further issues by concentrating dog activity elsewhere. I do not know a number of the Willerton parks well, but I do know Adenia Park and the Rossmoyne Shelley foreshore extremely well, and changing the status of these, in my opinion, will remove popular dog exercise areas and likely cause issues elsewhere. We need to continue investing into dedicated dog exercise parks and review off-lead areas in conjunction with this process. But that's when we should be looking at that, not right now. So I'm proposing an amendment, and I'll speak to the amendment. If you can put it on screen. I need to put it on the screen. So my amendment would be to add at the end of Part B, subject to the removal of subsections 3, Bicentennial Adenia Park, 4, Riverton Drive Foreshore, Creekview Close to 5th Avenue, and 5, Riverton Drive Foreshore, Watersby Crescent to Beryl Avenue, and Linkwater Street to Shelley Bridge.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I have a seconder, please, for the proposed amendment? Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you want to say a few words in support of your amendment?
Yeah. Look, whilst I agree that dogs, whether on-lead or off-lead, should be kept out of the bushland within the Canning River Regional Park and near the Canning River itself, Adenia Park is a popular destination for dog owners. The walking park, the playground, and the area along Adenia Road and even Rivermore Loop, which is on-lead, but I'm not actually sure why it's delineated, are largely removed from the environmental sensitive areas. Now, we need to erect fences and signage to stop people with dogs, and even fishermen and other people who might go in there and cause issues that can cause damage. However, the southern part of the park, where the old landfill site is more of a park than a conservation area. Not only will proposing this change cause concern within the community, it will likely push dog owners to Riverton Reserve, which is a well-utilised sport and recreation reserve. Now, around 5 years ago, when we were talking about Canning Vale parks and dog exercise areas there, staff mentioned that we need to conduct a review of all our active sports reserves across Canning, all of which are dog exercise areas, whether you go to Ferndale Park, Riverton Reserve, Burrenda, Shelley Reserve, they're all dog exercise areas. No review that I know of has been conducted, but getting rid of some of these dog exercise areas would just put even further pressure onto it, cause more dogs to dig holes in a confined area where people are trying to recreate. On the Rossmoyne and Shelley foreshore, the sections outlined in the report, again, are well utilised by people walking their dog. I've never owned a dog, but I appreciate that they need to get exercise. They need to go for a run off lead. This area, especially the one off Watersby Crescent, I mean, that's a very popular dog beach. Prohibiting off-lead exercise in that area where it's largely unused, I don't understand why we would be proposing this and causing conflict. The city and Crepper have been fencing sensitive parts along the river, and the most important thing is we need dog owners, cat owners, every pet owner to be responsible, to take responsibility for their pet. That's whether it's on lead, off lead, at home. But I think going out on community consultation with this will just cause concern, and I don't support it in the outset because I think it's illogical. This needs to be holistic. If we're going to propose some of these, even I don't quite understand Centenary West because it's not really used for anything. But if we're going to go down this path, we should be offering alternatives, and that's why that we need to do it as we build more dedicated dog parks so that people have nearby places to go exercise. But I really encourage council to support my amendment, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I will speak to the amendment. I may as well speak to it all in one to save a little bit of time. But firstly, I want to thank the officers for the recommendation of signage and the changes to Sandra Park in Rossmoyne. That's exactly what I was hoping for. And on those 2 points, I look forward to receiving the community's feedback. It is frustrating that our system can only provide limited information on the dog attacks. I obviously, when I first got the data, it was incorrect, and it kind of became this massive thing about dog attacks rather than what I was actually asked. What I was actually hoping for was a balance, and obviously, if there was any data to support dog attack hotspots, that we could put some focus on those areas. But the data that we've got doesn't obviously support that and doesn't identify that. So to me, that's a bit of a moot issue. I too did have some concerns with item B. I thought that the proposal of the on and off leash along Rossmoyne Shelley foreshore in the dog spaces strategy and the Shelley Rossmoyne foreshore management plan did provide an acceptable balance, and obviously it reconciled with those strategies and plans. So to see this recommendation for the whole stretch of that was a little bit of a surprise, especially considering there is no data, dog attack data on wildlife, humans or other dogs in those areas. So yeah, that's a little bit difficult. While I appreciate that this recommendation is asking for community consultation, I can't help but have the same concerns as the Deputy Mayor that the community aren't going to take too kindly. 118 people have already provided feedback on these issues, which is a really decent number considering sometimes we only get 5 or 12 or 15 submissions. And when you actually go through and analyse that, although there are some concerns about conservation areas, majority of the feedback was negative towards those minor changes proposed to the Rossmoyne Shelley dog exercise areas. But again, I appreciate that provided a balance, which is what I've been looking for this whole time. So while I can support those minor changes, I can't support these major ones. So I support the Deputy Mayor's amendment and thank him for proposing that. And I hope that the rest of the council also share our point of view with those two things. Again, I can't speak to the other parks and areas because I just don't know them well enough. But certainly I walk my dog along the Rossmoyne Shelley foreshore, and there is a really good balance of on and off leash dogs and responsible dog owners in that section, and I just couldn't justify putting the unnecessary negative or a concern in the community by requesting more restrictions there. So again, I hope everybody supports this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. So only dealing with the amendment at the moment. Councillor Singh, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Mr. Mayor, a question, please.
Yes, of course.
To the CEO or to the directors, can someone please confirm if any of the parks mentioned in the amendment by Deputy Mayor, which are being taken out, has any child playground area?
Councillor, Director Bowe, are you able to confirm?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Or not.
The section of Bicentennial Adenia Park does have some playground infrastructure and some other infrastructure, and there are some other park infrastructure along the Riverton foreshore, and Shelley Rossmoyne foreshore, sorry. As far as formal playgrounds, I don't believe so.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Just with Centenary Park West, so we're talking about on the other side near the river, a lot of it's just contaminated land. I don't think there's when you talk about park, you're talking about a park on the other side of the road, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Deputy Mayor, is that what's being referred to in there?
That's not my amendment.
Oh, that's...
Just asking because I might want to add it in.
I'll get Director Bowe to answer it. Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, it relates to that area which is on the riverside of the path that surrounds Centenary West.
There's a park in that spot? You're telling me a playground?
Director.
Well, there's some conservation areas. I wouldn't necessarily call it a park, but it's a conservation area.
Can I add, maybe with the mover and the seconder, could we add in the point 11, Centenary Park West and foreshore also be taken out?
Deputy Mayor, are you in agreement with that?
No, because Director Bowes just clarified I was thinking of the wrong area. I was thinking it was the Western Park area, but he's referring it to the foreshore area to the west of that, are you?
Could you just confirm, Director?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr Mayor.
Then I understand. No, I'm happy to leave the amendment as it is.
Councillor Jacobs is supported. If you're happy with the explanation provided by the Director, we shall move on. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's a question, if I may. Does the city have any concerns regarding taking these sites off the list for community consultation?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Not necessarily, Councillor Bain. We were asked to give some further consideration and make some recommendations on the equity of off and on-leash areas after the original report was presented in June. We have done that, and our recommendation is to undertake consultation, and then we would consolidate the feedback and then refer that back to council for their decision as to whether or not on-leash or off-leash areas were to be changed. But no major objection, no.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Overall, I support the amendment. However, I would like to request the mover and the seconder to consider, given that this is consultation only, we are not changing it from off-leash to on-leash, it will be beneficial for the consultation to go ahead for the areas which are near children playgrounds. There has been many complaints about dogs and kids not mixing up very well and misunderstandings. I absolutely support the idea that dogs need exercise space. So that's important. But if we could at least go ahead with the consultation only for the areas in these where there are children playgrounds. It's up to the mover and the seconder if they would like to accept that.
Deputy Mayor, do you understand the request?
I believe he's saying, Councillor Singh is suggesting to remove Bicentennial Adenia Park from my amendment. Is that what he's suggesting?
Councillor Singh.
Not the whole park. As Director Bose said, there are only certain sections of the park. So as long as, based on Director Bose's response, we can just go ahead with the consultation to keep the area around the children's playground. I'm not sure the technicalities of it, to be kept on leash or to be converted or to go ahead with the consultation, to be honest. The idea is just to keep dogs away from the children's playground area. That's the intention.
Yeah, not in every... Well, I disagree with that, but are you familiar with Bicentennial Adenia Park there? Do you know how big it is? Have you been down there recently to see it? Do you know the area specifically that's being talked about?
I don't know the area too well, and that's why I'm looking... that's why the suggestion is to the mover and the seconder and Director Bowe. That my intention is just to keep the playground areas a little bit safer, if it can be done. I'm not too familiar with the area as it is not within the Mason ward boundaries.
Yeah, I think that would be borne out by the community consultation. Deputy Mayor, would you like to make any further comment on the conversation with Councillor Singh, and then I'd like to move on if we can.
Look, I'm speaking, I presume I'm closing debate on the amendment. I've put these, as I mentioned in my initial commentary, it's a popular dog off-lead area, it always has been. In the dog attack data which this report has provided information on, there's no reported dog attack in Bicentennial Adenia Park. My concern is that changing this would then put further pressure on Riverton Reserve, which has the highest number of dog attacks. Out of all the dog attack area, all the parks where there's been reported dog attacks, it's Riverton Park. That's got 2 playgrounds there. It's got kids playing sport. It's got all sorts of people recreating. Bicentennial Adenia Park hasn't had any. That's not why the proposed consultation is being considered. It's based on conservation areas. I want to remove these 3 areas because I do not think it's in line with what the community expects, and I think it's these considerations need to be done in alignment with the installation of new dedicated dog exercise areas, which the city is proposing to build one potentially at Riverton Reserve in the future. That's when I think we should consider these things, and that's why I'm moving this amendment to remove those three from it, because I think all it will do is cause concern in the community, and that's why I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Singh, for your comments. Deputy Mayor, I don't think there's any need to rebut the amendment, as we have no one speak against it. I think we might just quickly put the amendment to the vote. Thank you, councillors. We'll put the amendment to the vote.
Amendment to Part B of motion EN, excuse me, 01823 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. The amendment's been carried. The amendment now forms part of the proper motion, and I understand, Councillor Secon, you wanted to put a further amendment to the motion. Can I ask what that might be?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my amendment.
We have an amendment on screen. That's the amendment. I'll just get you to just read that, make sure you're comfortable that that's the amendment that you're proposing.
Request the Chief Executive Officer to engage with the community, including the clubs and community groups who utilise the Week and Audrey Very Chatty Pavilion, in accordance with the Dog Act 1976, to determine support to change Riverton Park playing field oval from off-leash to on-leash and the northwest corner of the park, which lies between Laurel Close and Barber Close as per page 34 of the Dog Spaces Strategy, to a dog off-leash area.
Thank you. So that's in keeping with the amendment. That is your amendment?
Yep, that's my amendment.
Thank you. I'll just ask for a seconder for Councillor Secon's amendment. Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo is the seconder for the amendment. Councillor Secon, I'll just ask you to speak in support of your amendment. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a board member of Riverton Primary Campus and an active volunteer in my children's school, I get a lot of feedback on Riverton Reserve. Besides being an active ground for sporting clubs, as Deputy Mayor Kunze said earlier, the oval is also heavily used by parents with young children, given there are also 2 playgrounds catering to different age groups on the oval. For those that don't know Riverton Reserve very well, there is an oval where the playgrounds are located, and then there is a large grass area separated by a hill, which could be used solely for dogs. In addition to that, it is also a main access way for parents walking their children to and from school. For these reasons, I think it is worthwhile undertaking wider community consultation to change Riverton Reserve, the playing field oval side of it, from off-leash to on-leash, and the northwest corner of the park, which is over the hill, to the other side, to a dedicated dog off-leash area near Laurel Close and Barber Close. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. And just for clarification, if I didn't make it clear, the proposal is that the amendment would provide a new Part D to the current motion. We have Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo as the seconder for the amendment. We're just dealing with the amendment. Can I ask you to speak in favour? Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you. Yes, I support the amendment. Being the local council in the area, we constantly get feedback about the amount of dog poo on the reserve from all of the community user groups, and also when you're trying to play cricket or footy, having dogs chase after the balls is a little bit annoying. Also, obviously, with the data from the dog attacks, with it being the highest amount, I think it is one of those unique situations where we actually do have the space where we can separate the on and off lead area. It's already in the dog spaces strategies, and you know how much I love policies, plans and strategies and adhering to them. So this isn't going, deviating at all from that, and I would suggest from the community feedback that I've already received that this would be well supported, and also the conversion down the track once we can identify funds in the budget to actually make that northwest corner a dedicated dog park. So I hope that council will support this amendment as well for the betterment of the community, and hopefully we can bring down the number of dog attacks at Riverton Reserve by doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment before we deal with it? Councillors, we might put the amendment to the vote. Thank you. Just waiting for one more. Thank you.
The amendment to add a new Part D to motion EN-01823 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We now move back to the substantive motion. We've had the Deputy Mayor has spoken in favour of the motion. He's also then put an amendment which took us down a path of the amendment being adopted by Council and forming the substantive motion. We then moved to a second amendment put by Councillor Secon, which has also been adopted by Council and now forms a substantive part of the substantive motion. As a seconder, I'll just speak to the motion proper and continue with the debate. Just to say that, look, I support the recommendation as it now sits. And I'd just like to make the point too that the fact that councillors have actually elected to make a number of amendments to the officer's recommendation, it just does not diminish in any way the comprehensive and constructive work undertaken by the city staff, and I want to thank them for their very thorough report this evening. I too, as many in this room, are an owner of dogs, and I am also, as many people know, a former CEO of the Dogs Refuge in Shenton Park, and my own dogs walk in many of these areas. And I also would make the point that this should be a living document. These considerations should be taken every now and again by council, and I'm really pleased that council has been so engaged with this report. There's been, many questions asked and answers received, and also a number of amendments to this to make it a piece of work that we can all adopt in good grace and knowingly adopt it with the intent of serving our residents by putting some sensible amendments that balance up the needs of the city with also the needs of our community and also perhaps their expectations. So I am very supportive of the recommendation as it now stands. Once again, thank the city staff for their consideration and also to councillors for taking the time to amend it in such a fine manner. Does anyone else wish to speak in favour or against the motion? Councillor Mark Bain.
Thank you, Mr Hall. I support the recommendation. Just in regard to paragraph 17 and the change of status at Audley Park.
City's report?
Yes, are there any plans for a fence to go around the new upgraded playground?
Director, just in relation to paragraph 17 of the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There are no plans on foot or budgeted funds for that particular project, but again, we're happy to take feedback and make accommodation within the budget as required as we progress through both the playground renewal projects, but also our park infrastructure upgrades.
Thank you, Director. Deputy Mayor, I don't see any need to rebut. There's been no argument against. We shall put the matter to the vote. Thank you, everyone.
Substantive motion is amended. EN 01823 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 7.5, the second last item on tonight's agenda. The responsible officer is Dr. Sarah McQuaid, who is absent this evening. CO 005 of 23 is the item number. I shall read the title of it, which is DLG SC CSR FF 2024/2025 grant applications, Ferndale Reserve Facilities Upgrade and the Corinthian Park Community Facility Upgrade. And just before we start, I would just reiterate we've had a number of impartiality declarations by members of the council this evening, including myself. I don't propose to read those out to the meeting again. The councillors are still present in the room and those are on the public record. The officer's recommendation is on page 163 of the agenda and is on screen. Can I ask for a mover for this item? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Bain. Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Hall, I enthusiastically support this officer recommendation and the proposed projects and the relevant grant applications. Both projects are well overdue, but we've probably got that problem across the whole city of Canning. The Corinthian Park Tennis Club's been waiting about 5 years for work since the city budgeted funds for the roof replacement 5 years ago, and they're waiting patiently, but the club is thriving and its membership has wanted to use this opportunity to set the club up for decades to come. And Ferndale Reserve is in desperate need of investment. As I've said multiple times, its facilities are old, not disability compliant, and not very attractive for women who want to play sport, which is extremely important. The investment will help all the clubs using Ferndale Reserve to thrive into the future, but also hopefully attract new sports into the area and increase the capacity of Ferndale Reserve, which is extremely important. It's a very exciting development for both clubs. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, that we are successful with these grant applications and look forward to work proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, it's very hard to cross your toes because they're quite short and stumpy. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I fully support the officer's recommendation, and I'm really pleased to see these projects get to the grant funding application stage. And I too also have my fingers crossed that both are successful, and it's just chatting to Ferndale residents, and when I mentioned to them the prospect of this occurring in the near future, grant funding being available to upgrade the club rooms and change rooms at Ferndale Reserve, it's met with overwhelming positivity. They're really looking forward to it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, it's wonderful to hear. Councillor, thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I just also like to speak in favour of the officer recommendations. The Deputy Mayor mentioned both of these projects are well and truly overdue. I'd also just like to acknowledge the Deputy Mayor and his advocacy for the Ferndale Reserve. He obviously, as a child, used them, and now as an adult still uses them. But it's nice to obviously see councillors advocating outside of their local wards. I know the tennis club are pleased that they're now back on the table, but just also wanted to remind everybody that majority of the works at this stage of the design process are for the community hall, and I'm sure they are also very happy that they could potentially be getting upgrades to the facility again, which are very long overdue. So I would like to thank staff for putting these two projects as a priority, and hope council will also support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we put the matter to the vote? For speaking against? None. We shall put the matter to the vote. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bain, and also to Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Motion CO 00523 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you. The final item on tonight's agenda is item 14, and that is motions of which previous notice have been given. And we do have a notice of motion proposed by a councillor this evening. It's notice of motion 005 of 23. The title is Agenda Briefings and Ordinary, well, we'll get to that in a moment, but the title of this is Agenda Briefings and Ordinary Council Meetings during School Holidays. The recommendation is that, and I'm going to read it, the Council, in accordance with Section 5.4B of the Local Government Act 1995, provides notice of the following 2024 schedule of agenda briefings and ordinary council meetings to be held in the Council Chambers, Civic and Administration Building at 1317 Albany Highway, Cannington, commencing at 6 p.m. It then lists those dates. The recommendation is on page 175 of the agenda and is on screen. The mover is Councillor Second, thank you, and a seconder, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Second.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I would like to thank the city officers for supporting my NOM and Deputy Mayor Ben Kunzer for suggesting that this becomes ongoing rather than just an annual thing. As a mum of three young school-age children, and serving on council for 9 months now, the school holidays have become particularly challenging as we were unable to travel overseas to visit my immediate family or go away on long holidays locally with the agenda briefings, council meetings, and strategic briefing commitments. Additionally, with my ex-colleague Sarah Saberi resigning recently, it's left the City of Canning with only 2 women councillors, which is a mere 18% of the council makeup. In my dealings with the community, my work with running the culturally and linguistically diverse women's group and local community organizations, I've come across females interested in running for local government, but the school holiday commitments certainly pose a barrier. I'm hoping that with the notice of motion, more women are enticed by the prospect of nominating for council, be it our youths, young women, or mothers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Like Councillor Secon, I speak with many young working mothers and members of the community who show an interest in council. It is sad to say that one of the barriers is that council require us to be committed throughout the school holidays. For me personally, and as someone who I feel that I would be not doing my community service by not attending our council commitments, and also with family overseas, I've really struggled to balance family with council during the school holidays. This motion is not cancelling any meetings, it's simply just moving two back by 1 week each to make our council more family friendly, not just for elected members, but also for our staff who have young school-aged children as well. So that's pretty much it. I would really appreciate council support with this so that hopefully we can start attracting more people. It is sad that the state government haven't included this in the local government reforms, but maybe when I attend the Walga AGM next month, I can move a motion that maybe we do it across the sector. But it's great that the City of Canning could potentially be the first one to do this. So please, councillors, support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Secon, I have an amendment here for a new part 2. Is that what you proposed?
No, that was Councillor Spencer-Teo's.
That it's ongoing, not just for the upcoming financial, not just for 2024, but it becomes a. So I need to move the amendment? Okay. Yeah.
The amendment we have on screen is just a minor amendment. It's simply just reinforcing that this will be a permanent fixture, and if it's supported by the mover and the seconder, and I expect that it is, we'll just have that included in the as the motion. Councillor Spencer-Teo and Councillor Secon.
Yep.
Obviously. Thank you. Councillors, we'll have that then. That will become the substantive motion. We'll include that part 2, which just simply reinforces the position that will not be just an annual. Just a one-off event, that we will actually take that into consideration every time we look at the schedule of council meetings for every year from here on. And just from the chair, I'd like to support both Councillor Spencer-Teo and Councillor Secon for the amendment and for the proposal, and for women generally. And I guess too, it's not just for women, but as was rightly pointed out, for all people equally. But I do take the point that we need to be thinking more laterally and in a more inclusive fashion, and make sure that we don't leave anybody behind with the way that we conduct these meetings. It's imperative to councils going forward, to future councils, that we do everything we can to try to entice people into the local government sector, and to have some flexibility and be flexible in our approach to providing a workplace that is acceptable to all people in all situations. And so I think it's really important for us tonight to support this motion, because it provides that level of flexibility to this council, and it will make it in some small way a more welcoming place for people of both genders, but particularly I think women, it's understandable, to join this council and still be able to deal with the responsibilities that they hold so dear to their hearts. I think it's an important change. Does anyone wish to speak to the matter or speak against it before we put it to the vote? Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo and Councillor Secon, for proposing it. We shall put this final matter to the vote.
Motion Nom 005-23 has been carried with all 9 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you for your attendance tonight. I'd like to thank those in the public gallery for their attendance tonight. At item 15, urgent business, there is no urgent business for this evening. At item 16, confidential matters, there are no confidential matters for consideration by this council tonight. And at item 17, there being no further business, I now declare the ordinary council meeting of Tuesday, the 19th of September 2023 closed at 7:37 p.m. Thank you, everyone.